Hi, Malika.
Hi, Holly.
Hello, everybody listening.
Hi, guys.
This week's conversation is an important one.
Yes.
And a special one for a number of reasons. It's important because we are covering something on the podcast that we haven't really spoken about before and potentially using language that we haven't really used before. Mm-hmm. We are also talking about something that I think isn't spoken about necessarily enough in a educational setting. I've done a lot of research on this and people keep saying that it wasn't in the curriculum. It's a part of like Black history for Americans that isn't necessarily taught enough, and that is kind of like a community-led education on this topic. So this topic is Juneteenth, and this is a conversation that we can't really lead. We can't really have it on our own.
It's a continuation from the episodes that we did for UK Black History Month, which is in October. So we had a conversation about Black food in the UK, Black food culture in the UK. Does it exist? What is it? Etc. And we made reference in that episode to the strength of African American food cuisine, and we tried to draw parallels and comparisons, but the overarching conclusion is that it's quite hard to do that because it has such deep roots and history. So we've brought in an expert. we found an expert to host this conversation with us.
Welcoming to the podcast, KJ Kearney, aka Black Food Fridays. Click, 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 click. Hi KJ, welcome to the podcast.
It is a pleasure to be here. I'm a fan of y'all's for real. We already talked about this, but I want your actual listeners to hear that I'm an actual fan of this podcast. So it's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you. KJ first actually gave me the fright of all frights because I just saw a notification that said Black Food Fridays has stitched your reel. And I was like,
What did I say?
Or remixed or whatever. And I was just like, I'm getting cancelled. That's it. It's all over for me right now. And it was a reel from a very old episode about maple syrup. I was saying it was shocking to me when I learned out that what I thought was maple syrup was pancake syrup. Yeah. But KJ's thoughts about the Black food community currently also inspired our episode about Keith Lee.
Yes, you are the inspiration, the muse.
Yeah. So we did a bonus episode, if you guys haven't heard, called The Keith Lee Effect. We didn't have clips for it, so it might have slipped through the cracks, but we went through a thread of KJ's and like his thoughts, quite critical, but like thoughts that we agreed with, thoughts that we expanded on. So if you haven't listened to that, definitely go back and listen to that. And the thread is actually linked in that episode, so you can go and give KJ a fright and start giving him notifications, jumping into his conversations if you want. KJ and Black Food Fridays. So Black Food Fridays is a James Beard Award nominated social media initiative encouraging everyone to support Black-owned restaurants on Fridays. And you also have a newsletter, like a Substack, you write.
It's not any newsletter. It is the best damn Black food and Black food culture newsletter on earth. And it is called Who Made the Potato Salad? And I feel like I see that question. I see that question on social media a lot. Oh, there's a cookout. Oh, there's a funeral. Oh, there's something going on. So who made the potato salad? That's the question.
That is the question. It's always the question. At least in Black America cuisine, it's the question. Is that the same in the UK? Y'all want to know who made the potato salad?
Not the potato salad. Maybe the coleslaw, or who's cooking,
or the mac and cheese.
Or the mac and cheese. Yeah, the mac and cheese.
So potato salad is not really a thing.
It's not that big over here. If I'm being in the Black community, it's not that much of a big thing.
It's a symbol. Like if we do, I think we can still acknowledge that it's like a Black American thing that we do. Yeah. Or I guess if you have family across the diaspora, you might do
and it's barbecue food for a lot of people. Like it's very much, people will have coleslaw before they have potato salad, and they won't necessarily have both. When I've had parties and I've had potato salad, it usually is leftover. Not a lot of people will have the potato salad. They'll have all the other carbs.
That's true.
But they won't really. I love a potato salad.
Growing up, my mum made potato salad regularly. But the point that you just made of it being barbecue food and this being the UK, we probably get like 2 weekends a year
to have a barbecue.
Where we can have a barbecue, and therefore why we would eat potato salad. So, in your family and
Thank you for that perspective.
Yeah, in your family and household, who makes the potato salad?
Anybody but me. My little brother and my sister are outstanding potato salad makers. My dad is great at it. I have an aunt named Yvette. She can cook anything. But as long as I'm not cooking it, it'll be all right.
Is there egg in the potato salad, KJ? What's going in this? What's going in the
Absolutely.
potato? Yeah, okay, cool.
100% egg. Yes, yes.
Yeah, I love an egg in the
Are there
potato salad.
Absolutely.
raisins or sultanas in the potato salad?
I'm sorry, raisins?
I
mean,
look,
listen,
I can only tell you
to
what I've
each
seen on
his own.
Pinterest.
On Pinterest, who is uploading those images of Pinterest? The lady in the office that no one eats from. That's
I'm asking, I've got the expert here. Are there raisins in the potato salad?
There are raisins for white people, but not for the members of the African American culinary coalition. We are not putting raisins in our potato salad, bruh.
African American Culinary Coalition.
He said, absolutely not. And he will not have his name against any of that.
No,
Okay.
ma'am.
Well,
I'm not about to get canceled for my people. I gotta live here. I live in America. Y'all don't live here, so I'm not about to get canceled.
Don't worry, I'm not putting raisins in this is all Harley.
I'm
Harley
asking.
Harley likes some funny stuff, so I'm not surprised.
I'm asking. Anyway, are there any other accolades, strings to your bow that you want to highlight about yourself? You mentioned that you just came from like a elementary school project, whatever, like anything you want to highlight or platform. I feel like people do this at the end of the podcast, but not everybody makes it to the end of the podcast. So tell us now where to find you, what you're up to, and what you're working on.
I appreciate you. So I have been nominated for 2 James Beard Awards, and for those of you who are not initiated, the James Beard is like I would consider it. Y'all got the BAFTAs.
Yeah.
The BAFTAs. It's like that for food. A lot of people in America call it the Oscars or the Grammys of food.
Okay.
So I got nominated again this year for best social media account. So me and my dad will be going to Chicago this weekend to hopefully pick up my award this time instead of leaving empty-handed. I have a web series that I host on public broadcast station. PBS is our public broadcast station in America, in the nation. And it's called Citizen Better. And it teaches people how to be civically engaged. And the reason I host that is because my day job, I'm a community organizer. I work in historically Black neighborhoods in the cities of Charleston and North Charleston. There are 2 different cities. And I work in those historically Black neighborhoods. So I get paid to be nosy. I go to neighborhood association meetings, school board meetings, any meeting that would have an effect on our residents. And I bring that information back to the people. And if they want to organize around it, I help them organize around it. So what else is going on? Oh, I'm going to win best dressed. I mean, that's not a real event or real category, but I'm 100% going to win best dressed at the James Beard this year, dog. Like, I'm going to get that. They're going to have to make up an award because I'm about to get that.
You're not going to tell us what you're wearing. We're going to have to wait and see on social
Oh, no.
media.
Listen, by the time this episode is out, y'all can go to my Instagram at Black Food Fridays to see the fit. I showed the fit. It's on there. Like, I'm proud of this.
I'm looking forward to it.
We have a food-based awards here with the Fortnum and Mason, which is a big department store in the UK, and someone that we've had on the podcast before, Danae Moore, a Jamaican vegan chef. She put a lot of effort into her outfit for the Fortnum's award.
Yes.
She had she wore a white suit. She wanted food things. I think she had a special earring on. She had a soy sauce handbag, and the heels of her high heels were ducks.
Yeah.
So she had all these like foodie accessories going on. Look, KJ's face, he's looking, this is a contender. Somebody's trying to come for you and you ain't even gone yet.
No, she won. If she doing all that, she can have it, bro. She won. Like mine is tough, but I ain't go full food theme like she did.
Well, now you know what you still got. You said it's this weekend. You got a couple of days if you want to make any changes.
Some alterations. Nah, it's locked in.
Nah, that's it. It's set. It's set.
Locked
Right?
in.
Like we good.
Well, that is KJ's introduction to himself, his work, what he's up to, and what's the awards he's about to go and win. Amen. Mm-hmm. But the reason that he is here with us today is to have a conversation, as you've guessed from the title, about Juneteenth. So Juneteenth is something that I don't know enough about. Like, I don't know enough about it. I am someone who, growing up, went to Saturday school with the majority women-run Black education on a Saturday morning. but not necessarily to learn about African American history. It was more about Jamaican and Caribbean history and history within the UK, and I guess like our stories of coming here. So there's, as I said in the introduction, a bit of a gap in our knowledge and like our curriculum here. But it seems from my research that there's a big gap in the knowledge of the African American and like Black education system in America too. So let's just outline like what is Juneteenth. So I know it as a celebration of emancipation.
Yeah, it's also known as Emancipation Day.
That is marked on June
As I look to
19th.
KJ for confirmation. I don't want to.
I'm going to let y'all go ahead and talk, and then I'm going to come behind you. I love seeing your faces try to figure it out. This is great.
My
This
understanding
awesome.
is
I love
that
it.
it's Emancipation Day.
Yes.
So it's the day, the official day on paper,
Yeah.
when slavery was ended and the slaves were technically freed.
Yes, but I learned that they didn't know, or not
For 2
necessarily
years.
all of them knew for some time. And
Yeah.
that there was kind of like a white savior complex to the president at the time that was made to seem like he did a thing, but that a lot of the enslaved people didn't know they were free. And therefore, yeah, as you said, 2 years stayed in hardship and enslaved conditions. Did we get it right? Did we get it right?
No, I mean, you were very, very close. Very close. So in 1862, there was an Emancipation Proclamation that basically said what y'all said, that the enslaved people were free. But what we have to remember is that was pre-internet. So it took a while for everybody to learn that they were freed. And so in 1865, June 19th, is kind of when word finally spread all the way to the state of Texas. And so the state of Texas is traditionally the only state that really has done Juneteenth really big. So Juneteenth as a national thing is relatively new. And by relatively new, I mean since the COVID pandemic.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, everybody knew about it,
Yeah.
but it's a federal holiday now. Like people get that day off of work.
Biden put that into that was part of his administration.
Yeah, absolutely. And to be frank, a lot of African Americans, or if I say Black people, I just mean the Black people in the United States, right? But a lot of Black people in the States, while we are appreciative, because this is something that many people have been working on for a very long time, trying to make it a federal holiday, the way in which we got it did not sit well with a lot of us. And what I mean by that is the whole June, George Floyd, Breonna Taylor, all the protests and the uprising and all that. And then it was like, oh, here, y'all can have this. When it's like, well, that's not what we marching for right now. We marching for other things, but we'll go ahead and take this paid day off as well.
Yeah, I listened to a podcast with a guest was on the podcast, Adrian Miller, the title The Soul Food Scholar. I believe he has a cookbook out about soul food, and he I learned from him in that conversation that it came about mainly as in this second kind of revival and promotion of Juneteenth, in 2020. The way that he described it was, yes, it was a thing, but also it was kind of swept under the rug because there were so many other things going on, that there is still that gap of information and education about what Juneteenth is, why we should care, and what it means. So, okay, so we know it's the other way around then. So it was 2 years before, but then the date we're celebrating or commemorating is the day when the final people found out, rather than like the first.
Yeah.
We weren't far off. Okay, we weren't far off. I thought it was,
y'all weren't far off at all. It was beautiful. Good job.
Well, unless we're referencing some bad sources on the internet.
But I mean, this is part of it. And I think off air, after our conversations about Black food in the UK, we discussed why we made those episodes, and that I think we used the term of like time capsule, and that, each of these things lives on past us, and we will always have an open and honest conversation about the things that we do or don't know. And somebody is going to listen to this for the very first time knowing nothing. So to hear that we kind of got it wrong and now hear what it really, really is kind of like just a documentation of how people learn. So like, this is another time capsule of, how information and how education happens. In terms of what the celebration of Juneteenth looks like in the US, knowing what it's commemorating and the like dark and horrific history that event has, what does that look like now? Like, is it a celebration? Is it like somber? Like, what does that look like?
That's a very good question. I think social media will have people believing that Black people in America have been celebrating Juneteenth forever,
Yeah.
and that's just not true. In the state of Texas, they've been celebrating Juneteenth since 1865. Everywhere else, you'll find pockets of people who celebrate Juneteenth. But then you'll also find pockets of people who refuse to celebrate Juneteenth because that's not actually when we were freed. You know, we were freed in 1862. And so like where I live at in Charleston, Charleston is kind of considered the epicenter of African American as we know it. So the majority of the people who were enslaved and brought to this country came through my city. Their first steps were in this city. And so what we know as African American kind of developed from where I live at in Charleston. Then you had the migration and people moving, you know, all over the place or whatever. But so there are people in Charleston who just like they refuse. Our day is January 1st. That's when we were free. That's Emancipation Day for us. And so, you know, while it's good to see Juneteenth getting a lot more notoriety all over the world, obviously, because I'm here talking with y'all and y'all are based in the UK. It's not a foregone conclusion that it is something that A, everybody wants, and B, everybody celebrates. So we're still developing, I would say, our Juneteenth cultural legs up under us. Because for most people, they didn't start celebrating until it became a federal holiday recently.
So then, KJ, given that you're from Charleston, and that's kind of like the general consensus in Charleston is that our day is January 1st, Juneteenth doesn't really apply to us. How do you engage with Juneteenth? Do you see it as something to be celebrated and uplifted because it's like the overall, it's probably better to acknowledge it than to disregard it? Or are you very much a Charleston native, I'm on January 1st type of time, not really interested?
Oh, great question. No, I want to be more excited about Juneteenth. You know what I mean? Like I'm happy to have the day off. That's awesome. But but more importantly, I do think it is something that should be celebrated. Whether it directly affects you or not, I just feel like it means so much to so many Black people that why not? Why not celebrate it? You know what I mean? Like, what does it hurt to do so? And Black people are always looking for a reason to grill or throw some, you know, some meat on the grill you know, commune with one another. So why not use this as an opportunity to do so and teach some history at the same time? One of the things that you're seeing, that I'm seeing that's happening in the States is that like a lot of people are becoming disillusioned already with Juneteenth because of commercialization, right? And it's something that I wrote about at the very beginning of all this was that, all right, if Juneteenth becomes a federal holiday, the same shit that happens in Christmas and
Yeah.
Thanksgiving and Halloween is going to happen. They're going to be Juneteenth plates and napkins and T-shirts and hats, you know, and like other party favors. And because that's what we do to holidays, they are commercial drivers. And so if you want large corporations to get behind a holiday, they're going to have to be able to make some money off of this. And so that also kind of rubs people the wrong way. Is that it just became a thing and now it's already being commercialized. And I just think that's not in touch with reality. The reality is every major holiday has an economic component to it.
Yeah.
Juneteenth, especially being a federal holiday, is not going to be exempt. So what we should do is probably create some guidelines around how how to celebrate it versus trying to act like it don't exist.
Yeah, yeah. That annoys me about some of our holidays too. Like I think we have a bigger celebration around Easter time than necessarily in the US because we have bank holiday, we also have like national holidays then, and the commodification of that has just kind of gone down the chocolate chocolate Easter eggs road, which always, like, every year I'm like, I don't know, I feel like you still get Christian messaging with Christmas, but there isn't any in Easter.
I think it depends on where you look though, because even with Christmas, you actually don't at this stage, like, commercially get any real religious messaging. It's it's a festive it's the festive season,
Yeah.
and it's a time for family. That's what it's kind of
100%,
positioned as.
yeah.
So I think for me, when it comes to protecting things, but also acknowledging that in order to get the buy-in, when you're trying to protect something, or if you're part of a culture and you're trying to preserve it, but then also get that buy-in from corporations, you know, it's a federal holiday, like you said, and these things require it to be monetized, to be profitable. You kind of have to, for me, you kind of have to let that do its thing, but then you have to kind of own the conversations that are happening internally, make sure that that education, that teaching is still going on, so that the people that it's directly impacting, that it's here to actually enhance their culture, still have a way to understand what this thing is for.
Yeah.
I think sometimes people expect the people that are pushing the money behind it to also be the preservers and the champions of the culture.
Yeah.
And when you leave it up to them, that's when they shapeshift it and turn it into something that it never was. Then they can start to change the narrative. They can put saviors where saviors never existed. They can say, you know, Biden brought us Juneteenth type of thing, when it's like, no, actually, it was always a thing. And the truth is, he gave it to us during this time to appease us, but this was here before that point in time.
And that reminds me of something else that happened at that time, which was the blackout day that happened.
Oh, the Black Squares.
The Black Squares thing at that time to me was interesting, because the black people, like, it was that protectiveness of, we don't want to be the educators of this thing to you. Like, we don't want to do that. But if we don't protect it and if we don't step in, you're gonna make the wrong people be the people who like made this thing, created this thing. So yeah, I do understand that protectiveness of like wanting to be on board so that no one else gets a seat at the table. No, the wrong people don't get a seat at the table.
I think that's why it's important when you have people like KJ and platforms like Black Food Fridays, where it's not all what the work doesn't always feel relevant or popular, that you continue to do the work and have those conversations, because
100%.
when it becomes relevant or mainstream or popular, if you're not already doing it, they will jump on the person that seems like, oh, they'll do it, so let me go to this person. Whereas if I'm thinking of Black food in America, I already know he's been doing this. Do you know what I mean? So I'm likely to gravitate that way, rather than, oh, hi guys, post on my story, who's willing to talk to me about X, Y, and Z, and then you can get nonsense kind of floating in because they want to be heard.
I love everything y'all said. I think it reminds me of why Kwanzaa hasn't really taken off, right? Because Kwanzaa is a decidedly non-commercial holiday. So for those who do not know, Kwanzaa is like it's a Christmas time celebration that don't really have anything to do with Christmas. It's a 7-day celebration that happens the day after Christmas until New Year's, and this is an American thing, I'm assuming. I don't know how many people outside of America celebrate Kwanzaa. Y'all do? Okay.
Yeah.
Word, yeah. So I'm not gonna try to explain it then. Most of y'all probably know what Kwanzaa is. But like the reason why Kwanzaa has, okay, fair. So every day of Kwanzaa, there's a different principle, or Ungazu Saba, and each of those principles represents a different part of the collective culture, the collective experience of Black people in America. And so the gifts that you give are, you cook something for somebody, you give them a book. It's not like you're not getting diamond rings for Kwanzaa. Like, that kind of defeats the purpose. So although I think, again, if Kwanzaa ever will take off, there will need to be a commercial component, that everybody like gets a Kwanzaa necklace or something. I don't know, make some shit up, but like something like that's going to have to happen for it to become a thing. So I just find the relevance between the lack of commercialization and the lack of celebration for Kwanzaa kind of being on opposite ends of what's happened to Juneteenth, which there was no representation in commercial aspects. Now there is, so therefore a lot more people are starting to get on board with Juneteenth.
Yeah, I think having grown up celebrating Kwanzaa and still acknowledging it and participating in it, there is something about it that is very much not inclusive by its like core nature and its like value. And I think that is also a limiting factor in commercializing something like Kwanzaa, that for it to be commercialized, almost is contradictory to the whole purpose of Kwanzaa. And that's not to say that Juneteenth being commercialized, it's for everybody, because ultimately if that is not part of your history or your struggle essentially, then really you can acknowledge it in solidarity. But I think for people it's going to be, or they will probably see it quite hard to show solidarity to Kwanzaa if they don't identify as African American, or outside of that as a Black person as part of the diaspora. So it's interesting. It's definitely something to think about, because I enjoy it, but it has never made it outside of if you know type of territory. And then I think during that 2020 phase, that's when anything that you could participate in that could possibly highlight your Blackness was kind of, do you know there's this? Do you know there's that? Do you know there's this? But then it kind of all quietened down as everything kind of quietened down. And Juneteenth has managed to, because it's a federal holiday, sustain that and go beyond that. But like you said, there's that commercial element to it, and then it's at risk of being distorted almost.
Because I guess the question to you is, so like you've explained kind of how people were celebrating. You mentioned a grill, and we're going to come back to that point. But for people who don't necessarily want to engage with it, and especially from, and this is maybe our perception as outsiders, but the hostility around holidays that are race focused, or commemorative events that are race focused, or even just historically accurate, can, people who don't agree, like you're talking about Texas and like areas of the South that potentially still have Confederate flags hanging, like what are they doing on Juneteenth? Like when they've been given this day off for this particular reason, there's no like what do they call it, mandated reading list. So like what are the people who don't give a damn doing on this like mandated, you must acknowledge why you are off work today at a bare minimum, let alone like do anything else?
If I may be frank, I don't give a damn what they're doing. Like it don't bother. Like I'm not concerned with what they're doing. Like here's how wild my state is. So South Carolina was the first state to secede from the Union. So we essentially caused the Civil War. In my state, we have Confederate Memorial Day.
Oh,
so
right.
There's a day where my state recognizes the loss of life for people who fought for the Confederacy. Now, I'm sure they don't give a damn what I'm doing on that day, because what I'm not doing is commemorating people who got their ass kicked in a war. Like I'm not doing that. So I don't know. Maybe they're catching up on Netflix or something. Like I really don't know. And as long as they don't get in my way, I'm cool. They can do whatever they want.
Okay, so I'm my mind. I'm at KJ's Juneteenth, right? The little brothers on the potato salad. What else? You mentioned a grill. We need to come back to this grill, right? So from our perspective over here, we both have been in America many times. Mike has lived there for a period of time. We both have family there. This notion of grilling, Blackness, barbecue, holidays, it just seems to be a thing. And this cookout thing, for those of our listeners who have never been to America, their perception of America will come from TV and from movies where this cookout thing is a whole thing and it's a thing. Like, number one, is it a real thing? Like from the horse's mouth, is the cookout, like what is the cookout?
Okay, so I'm so happy we're having this conversation. So there is a physical cookout, and then there is a metaphysical or a theoretical cookout, right? So the physical cookout in especially in the South, because the weather is so good compared to some other parts of America, like where I live at, it gets cold, and cold is relative, right? But it gets cold maybe around Christmas, January, February. The rest of the year, you literally could be outside grilling. So in the South, bruh, baby shower, graduation, somebody got a new job, it's nice outside, and I don't have nothing to do. Like, we don't really need a reason. We'll make up a reason to grill, right? Now, grilling is associated with the physical cookout, right? Not to be confused with barbecuing, which is a phrase that people do use interchangeably, but it's not the same thing. Like, I don't barbecue because I don't know how to cook a whole hog. Traditionally, that's what barbecue is. You digging a hole in the ground, you know what I mean? You putting a big old pig in it, and you are slow cooking it for hours. I mean, 10, 12, 13, 16 hours. I don't do that. Like, I'm not, maybe one day I'll learn how to do it, but I don't know how to do that. So the cookout is just a reason for us to put some meat on the grill. Like, that's really what the cookout is. Now, in the in the proverbial cookout, which it always accompanied with the, so it's the cookout. You can have a cookout, which is
Right.
something you invite your friends to.
Right.
The cookout is I would say Black America's Wakanda, right? It's not a real place. It's not a real place, but it's real in our hearts. And it's a place where we are allowed to perform, to rest, to be without the white gaze. And so oftentimes in America, you'll see Black people arguing with each other because there's some Black people who want to invite our white brothers and sisters to the cookout. I am 100% against that. I love my white brothers and sisters, right? But there's some stuff that's for us. And this isn't even a real thing. It's Wakanda. It's not even real. You know what I mean? But like, why y'all so pressed to invite white people to something that's not even a real thing, bro? Like, can we have an imaginary space? So that's where I stand. And like, I had somebody be like, hey, you know, like in the Black Panther movie, you had a couple white people who were in there. And I'm like, them white people was fighting, right? Like they was trying to help Wakandans keep their stuff. Now, if you want to invite some white people who are willing to give up their arm like Bucky did in the movie, by all means. If that's the cost of admission, give up an arm. All right, if you're willing to do that, come on through.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there is a distinction between a cookout, which you can do anytime, and the cookout, which is a made up fairyland of Black rest and relaxation.
I see people.
Does that make sense?
Yeah,
It does.
100%.
It does. I see people like on TikTok, and somebody will like make a plate of like cornbread, fried chicken, beans, greens, and they'll be like,
You're invited to the cookout.
And then you'll see people in the comments like, absolutely not. Like,
but-
close the doors.
Yeah, but it's not even like you've just given a food example. Some people will just
do
will
not
just
dancing.
break dance.
Dancing, yeah.
Some people will just break dance,
They'll be
and it's like
dancing.
she's invited to cookout, and it's like, for what?
Why? Yeah, absolutely.
Like,
why? And the
for
thing,
what?
it's an interesting point that you make, because even here in the UK, you'll find instances where people that are not of like Jamaican cultural heritage, they'll cook curry goat and rice and peas, or they'll make a pot of jollof rice, and all of a sudden it's Oluwa so and so, or yes, my Jamaican sister. And it's like, let's just calm down. Like, there is that constant ongoing conversation about cultural appreciation versus, what's the word? Like
Appropriation?
Appropriation, yeah, exactly. And it's
Culture vultures.
when you are opening the door at the cookout over something quite trivial that has no positive impact, it's almost enabling that behavior, that the culture is that
Because you know what,
frivolous, that people, you can just come in
anyone
for
can
doing
come in.
anything.
And you know what happens when you invite people to things?
They take over.
They bring plus ones.
Well, okay, yeah.
They bring guests, and next thing you know, there's no door in the cookout because the door's been kicked off,
blown off.
and somebody else is hanging bunting over our red, green, and black flags. And next thing you know, there's all kinds of stuff going on up in here, and we're commemorating and we're doing step up too.
They're changing the
in the back
menu.
garden.
The potato salad's got raisins in it. Literally.
Before we know it,
I just feel like there are so many opportunities to include non-Black people in Black events. Like, for instance, if there are any white people listening and they're like, what is a good opportunity for me to get some Black culture that doesn't invite me, that doesn't cause me to get invited to the cookout, so to speak? Go to an HBCU homecoming. If you want to get as close to the proverbial cookout as you can, that is where you need to be. Ain't nobody gonna turn you away. Y'all come on down. In fact, I'm saying y'all white people, y'all the lovely co-host of Sonder Salt. Y'all need to come to an
We
HBCU
do.
homecoming because it is amazing. It is one of the best things that God has ever put on this planet, bro.
What time of year does that fall? Like, is that's graduation period, right?
Yeah, so for those of you who do not know, HBCU stands for Historically Black College or University.
Universities.
And for most colleges and universities, homecoming in general, not just at HBCUs, is in the fall during what we call football season, American football season.
Right.
So homecoming is usually attached to a football game.
Okay.
It could be your last game of the season, or it could just be a game where you feel like you're going to win because don't nobody want to come to homecoming and lose. So, so it's usually in the fall. For my alma mater, I went to a HBCU. Our homecoming this year is October 26th. And so, but it's in the big city of Orangeburg, South Carolina, which don't fly over here to go to Orangeburg. I'm gonna just tell y'all,
Right.
don't do that.
So where should
If
we
you
go?
go fly over, like go to Howard's homecoming because that's in DC.
My cousin is at Howard and she's loving it, and she definitely she notices the difference. Like, even the fact that she has friends. Like, she actually has friends at uni, and like I think that's, or college, should I say, and I think that's an important part of that. So I can only imagine what homecoming's like when you've spent the year or 3 years if you're doing a full undergraduate degree in community like that, and you've worked out who can make the potato salad in that time, which is a very important thing to point out. Let's talk about food, and let's bring it back to Juneteenth a little bit, and potentially what you're having on any cookout, but potentially the Juneteenth, the real one, not the Wakanda one, because
That's a cookout.
a cookout, not the cookout, the Juneteenth cookout, a cookout.
At a Juneteenth
Cookout. But I want to go to KJ's one, so it's the.
Oh, okay.
His one is the KJ Juneteenth cookout that I'm going to. It's Wakanda to me because I'm not actually going to go.
We might get there one day. It's gonna happen, but it's gonna happen. That's why it's not Wakanda.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
But are there things that you eat on Juneteenth or around Juneteenth that have any actual symbolism? Like, is there any symbolically black food that you would eat or celebrate at this time specifically? So on that same podcast that I was listening to, there was a distinction made around soul food and trying to explain it to, I believe, the white host, and saying that a symbolic difference of soul food is the difference between a fresh peach cobbler and a cobbler made with canned peaches, and just kind of differentiating the effort and like the historical significance of making things from scratch, which is obviously what enslaved people had to do with the bare provisions that they were given, but also like with what they had, and coming from the heart, like being able to actually feed your family. So are there corners that don't get cut at a Juneteenth cookout, or just at a cookout as a whole, that represent like that spirit of blackness and soul food, and in kind of commemoration of how these dishes have come about?
Some menu staples.
Yeah, I mean, the only real, I would say, through line for every Juneteenth cookout is red, the color red. So red Kool-Aid, red soda, or soda pop. I don't know what y'all call it in the UK, but red carbonated drinks.
Fizzy drink.
There we go. There we go. Watermelon, red velvet cake, red velvet cookies. Red is a big deal. Red is supposed to represent the resilience of the enslaved people who were able to make it to freedom. And so red is all over the place. From a food standpoint, red is all over the place. But the soul food conversation is an interesting one, in the sense that what I consider soul food in Charleston, South Carolina, somebody in Texas might not consider it, or someone in Chicago might not consider it, because when you move from Charleston and you start migrating, different food becomes available to different people. So I live, a stone's throw away from a river. We have beaches. We're on the coastline. So we have multiple beaches, multiple islands, multiple rivers. So seafood is a very heavy part of the Charleston diet, so to speak, right? So for us, soul food would be various fish, fried fish. We eat whole blue crabs. So we boil, in down here we boil them. In Baltimore, they steam them. You know what I mean? But like, we boil blue crab. So blue crab is considered a soul food item to me, because I grew up in a place where crab exists. My father is from Tennessee. In Tennessee, they don't really eat grits. Not the part of Tennessee he's from. They don't eat grits. They ate rice for breakfast. And they put butter and sugar in their rice, which but whatever. That's how they live their life. You know what I mean? But that's a soul food item to them. In Chicago, they eat spaghetti and fried catfish.
Yeah,
right? Like that's soul food to them. So soul food means different things depending where you are in the nation. But if you want to do a Juneteenth culinary celebration, you need as many red food items and red drink items as humanly possible.
It's so interesting you say that about soul food, because from the outside looking in, and I think it's probably rooted in communication, people tend to start to lump things, and then they will overemphasize certain dishes in order to convey a concept. So in order to get people to understand that there is an African American food culture and there is this thing called soul food, you will hear from the people that speak the loudest about what soul food is, and dependent on where they're from, that's what our understanding of soul food is. So when I think about soul food, the plate looks like cornbread, black-eyed beans, fried chicken, collard greens, maybe fried catfish with grits, biscuits
and
as
gravy,
well.
gumbo.
Yeah, those types of things. Whereas I would have never considered blue crabs soul food. I don't know what I would have considered it as, but I just wouldn't have considered it as soul food. I've always seen it as very specific dishes, but I think it's important to remember that the landmass of America is so vast anyway, that not everybody is going to eat the same things, like you said. And historically, what people eat is dictated by the land and their surroundings. So, of course, if you have access to more fish, you're going to have a very seafood-heavy fish diet, as opposed to somebody that doesn't. So a lot of their food is around beef or chicken, because that's what they have access to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I would also add that so what you said, as in terms of what you think of a soul food plate, I think most people, 99% of the people who know what soul food is, would consider what you just named a typical soul food plate. And I'm not even arguing against that. In fact, y'all talked about Adrian Miller earlier, who wrote the book on soul food. And that's one of the things that he talked about in the book, that while there are some items that we all generally consider as soul food items, he's traveled all over the nation and, to study this. And he's found that even things that he thought were just typical soul food, you go to the other side of the country, they're not doing that. Like, for instance, where I live at in the South, sweet tea, you don't even ask for sweet tea. When you say you want tea, people just assume that you want sugary, sugary tea. Like that's what they just assume, because that's what we identify as tea. But if you go to California, or you go to New York City, or even, DC, Baltimore, right? They're not really drinking sweet tea like we're drinking it by the gallons down here, dog. Like diabetes on lock, baby. You know what I'm saying? Like, but like in Cali, they're not really drinking a whole lot of sweet tea. So all of those individual things that you mentioned would be a traditional soul food plate. But to the harken back to the point that we were just making, depending on where you live, you're gonna find different items. Like, we don't really eat catfish because we're by the ocean. You know what I mean? So like, we're eating flounder and we're eating shark. We're eating crab. We're eating stuff that you find in the ocean.
Yeah.
But as you go further inland, in like a Mississippi or Louisiana, you're gonna get crawfish. That's where catfish starts popping up. Things like that. We don't eat crawfish because we get our stuff from the ocean most of the time. You know what I mean? So even a state, and man, that was such a good point. I don't think people who've never been here realize how big America is.
Yeah.
Like, the United States is massive. So I think you can get across. I think I read somewhere that you can start at the bottom of England and get to the top in like 4 hours, maybe something like that. I don't know if that's true.
Maybe like six to eight.
Yeah.
6 to 8.
Okay.
Yeah.
6 to 8. You can be in Texas and you won't see the other side of Texas. That's one state in 8 hours if you drive. California might take you 12 hours to drive through it.
I was amazed by that. I did a flight. I have family in Florida and I have family in California. And I was like, I'll just see them on one trip. And like, I'll get a flight between one to the other. I knew it was flyable. And I was like, oh yeah, like I'm setting off. When you just know your flight time.
Yeah.
So I was like, right, I'm leaving at 2. I'll probably get there by like 3. And it was like from Florida, which is very much on the East Coast, all the way over to Los Angeles on the other side. I think it was like a 6.5-hour flight because you fly with the curvature of the world. You fly back through time zones, but just the actual real distance and time took 6 hours on a jumbo jet. And I was just like, wow, okay. Like, and again, I've done the flight that goes from New York to Miami. So it's almost like, okay, I know how long this side is, almost. Yeah. I know how long that side is, like from east to west in that bit. But even that, the whole, like, what do they call it? The Southwest, like the whole like top corner where they have like forests.
Oh, I don't
like
know.
Seattle.
The Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, the Pacific Northwest, like that whole corner there where there's like forests, woodlands. I'm like, you have 100 different climates, let alone like how many types of food and like ecosystems are able to like come about from those climates. But it's so funny because just before we start this episode, you asked me about crawfish. Yeah. And I had it in New Orleans, but I also feel like I had it in Florida because they have that like swamp culture, like swampland cultivation where like you'll get crawfish. But yeah, I'm glad we asked that question because I didn't know that about Charleston, North Carolina. We spoke about barbecue on season 3. I think it was our opening episode, and we had Angela, the kitchenista Davis, to interject with some, again, we call on the experts when we need them the most, and she explained to us some principles of barbecue and, again, reiterate the same point KJ made about the distinction between grilling and barbecuing and smoking. So if you want to go and listen back to that episode, we will leave it linked in the show notes. But yeah. I'm glad we.
But also now, hold up. I need to be real clear. South Carolina and North Carolina are 2 different states, and we will fight. We will fight over barbecue because what they do in North Carolina is a vinegar-based North Carolina, and in South Carolina we call it a gold or a mustard-based barbecue in South Carolina. So that's another thing. Like even within barbecue culture in this country, different states do things differently. You know what I mean? So barbecue might mean something totally different in Texas. In Texas, when they say barbecue, they're thinking brisket, right? Like in Charleston, in South Carolina, you're thinking pulled pork. And so it just depends on where you at. Like Alabama, they're known for white sauce, which is like a mayonnaise-based barbecue sauce that they make. So Kansas City has its own style, all this stuff.
I'm not going.
You're like, no, that's not for you.
Like you lost me at mayonnaise-based barbecue.
I don't know how I feel. I don't know how I feel about that. Yeah, sounds a bit. So are you sticking with your roots, KJ? What are you going for like, what is your actual favorite? Because there's what is part of your culture, but then you've ventured out, you've eaten a lot of food. You know, you might think we do this well, but they do it a little bit better. How do you feel?
I do travel for food. This is true. I've had barbecue in many places. I am perfectly fine sticking with South Carolina's mustard-based barbecue. But I will say, Texas brisket is worth flying to Texas for. Like, if you get good brisket, that is worth the plane ticket to go to Texas. And there are not a lot of places outside of Texas that do it well, because it's just not their culture. You know, Texas brisket is Texas culture, barbecue culture. So they do it very well. I would also say that, you know, I know you don't like the mayonnaise joint, but white sauce is good, bro. Like, you should try before you knock it. You should come and taste some white sauce before you throw it away.
I feel like there are just so many other things for me to eat first.
I'm gonna try it.
I mean, go ahead.
The curiosity, because it sounds a bit nuts to me. So I'm like, I wanna try it and see how this mayonnaise is adding to this barbecue experience.
My trip can only be so long, and by the time I've finished eating a whole hog roast, I'm not sure I'm gonna have space for anything else. Do you know what I mean?
Okay.
Oh, that was very kind of you. I like how you worded that.
I think
diplomatic.
Yeah, I think that's all I'm gonna have time for.
Yeah, very.
So thank you for telling us these things, very important things, and I feel like we could sit and talk for hours. And KJ, we'll have to have you back on the podcast, but we'll come to you. Like, we'll come to you and then we can...
Oh, listen, I'm trying to come to y'all.
Yeah. We all come to each other.
We'll come to each other for
There
part
we
2
go.
and then part 3, and then bring in some other friends to really just like we said, we're just trying to make some time capsules with information, bite-sized information to kind of just get people's brains going as well, as much as our own, to go forth. If there's things that have piqued your interest in this episode, please go and research them further, look for reputable sources. I'm sure on the week of this episode, there will be a lot online that you can tap into. Yeah. Subscribe to KJ's newsletter, which comes out every week, every month.
It comes out on Fridays when I feel like it.
I hear it.
Similar to our newsletter.
Yeah,
So subscribe to KJ's newsletter to just stay in the loop of what's going on the other side of the pond when it comes to Black food. It is a very different story to what's going on our side of the pond. We have listeners globally. We have a fair few listeners coming out of West Africa who I just find it interesting when I think of the different Black clusters around the world, and they're just listening to us talking about US versus UK all the time, and it's like you guys are also having a completely different experience. So if there's anyone as well that wants to come on and talk about Kwanzaa in like more depth, or just continue that conversation and keep that conversation going, we would love to also have that conversation. So let us know. Reach out to us. KJ, thank you so much. It has been an absolute honor and a pleasure to have you on the podcast. If anyone is only listening to this podcast, please do go and check out the clips on Instagram, because KJ did dress up specially for us for this episode.
In the garb. Gave us that kente dashiki. Fantastic.
Yeah. So definitely go and check out the clip.
Comfort is key.
Yeah.
Exactly. And also by this point, he'll be able to go and see his outfit that he's worn for the James. But don't forget, you're going to go check out the outfit. So we will link that post and the post where he's holding the medal.
Yeah, of course, when he wins.
Ooh. Let's go ahead and speak that into existence, bro.
And we'll link that below, as well as all of KJ's resources, websites, social media, and everything.
I think my last point would be it's just important to engage with the people that you see consistently doing the work. And I would definitely say KJ is one of those people that at the forefront, you see him talking about food, but then he's still very much true to honouring his culture, highlighting the importance of African-American food, Black food in the US, having the conversations, the uncomfortable conversations, but then also keeping it lighthearted sometimes, poking the bear, inspiring us to dig deeper about influencer culture, people like Keith Lee. And I think that's important. It's not always, like I said, about agreement. It's about having the conversation and then formulating ideas, formulating opinions, being critical of the things that you see. And so I would definitely encourage you to engage with him on social media.
So thanks for listening, guys. If you like this episode, don't forget to leave us a rating and review. Go follow us.
5 watermelons.
But yeah, 5 Juneteenth watermelon stars only. Nothing less. If you do, I'm going to take it racially.
Well, you're never going to get into the cookout. You wasn't getting in anyway.
You weren't getting in anyway. But like,
it's impossible at that stage.
I mean, it's Juneteenth. Help a sister out. Help a sister out. Give us a 5 watermelon star review. And we will catch you in the next episode.
Bye, guys.
Bye, guys.
Say bye, KJ.
Oh, my bad. Bye.